is a security card in South Africa?
Well, it's about as secure as it is anywhere else in the world. It's all related to how much cards are used in general, so not just credit cards, but debit cards. It follows a lot of the trends that you see in the likes of the UK. South Africa's gone chip and pin. Why is it gone chip and pin? Because there's a lot of counterfeit fraud, card skimming. It's not necessarily just cards that are used here, but that are skimmed here and then used cross-border. The South African banks have actually been pretty good for the last 10 to 15 years in terms of putting in fraud detection solutions. So the major banks, and that catches a lot. You know, if you look at some of the other markets, even in developed markets in Europe, their fraud detection solutions are pretty limited. Here they're quite sophisticated. Some are using neural network technology, neural network models, and that catches a lot of fraud patterns and a lot of fraud trends. So in terms of counterfeit fraud, there's always a lot of counterfeit fraud everywhere, but it goes for the weakest link in the chain, so whatever country that is. Doesn't mean that if you put in measures like fraud detection solutions on the authorization side and you bring in EMV or chip and pin, doesn't mean it's going to go away. It just goes somewhere else. And where it's going now is it's going to card not present, which is why PASA have mandated 3D Secure in South Africa. A lot of merchants are still trying to get on board because they don't like 3D Secure, because even though there's some protection around fraud, they see for the merchants a lot of lost business, abandoning of transactions, an extra step in the process, passwords, but even things like that now. So in the digital space, online transactions, fraudsters are sophisticated now. Malware that's installed, it's very easy through social networking to steal user IDs. Static passwords are the worst. Even now they're getting dynamic passwords, OTPs sent via SMS. You have SIM swaps, you have all of this. So fraudsters are always looking for new ways to target the weakest link in the chain of payments, and that's moving from counterfeit fraud, so card skimming, to card not present fraud. And with the growth in e-commerce as well, that's where the opportunity is for them.
And how can 3A Technologies prevent the online?
Well, we use a lot of the same technology that you do on the authorization side. So when you use your card in a shop and it goes through to the issuing bank for authorization, have you got enough funds in your account, etc. It runs it through some fraud detection rules or models to say, does this look suspicious? But for 3D Secure, it only does that after the transaction's been authenticated in the 3D Secure environment. Then the transaction goes up for authorization. What we bring to the 3D Secure space is the ability to, at the time of the transaction, is to make a decision based on how risky that transaction is in the 3D Secure environment. So looking at things such as the device. Where is the device? What type of device is it? What browser are they using? Does it fit the same history and profile as that person who has made a transaction before? And you have a big data advantage in the online space. In point-of-sale transactions, you only get transaction data. The merchant, the amount, the card number, PIN, yes. In the online space, you have all of that. You have all the transaction data, but you also have device data. You can geolocate them. That's a lot more powerful than the authorization side. So we bring the opportunity to make a decision, a risk decision, at that point of the transaction. So that in fact, you don't need to then send an OTP or ask for a password, because you can make a far more robust risk decision based on all of those data points than you can with a password that could be hacked. So you can say, we don't need to ask for a password, we'll just authenticate the transaction. So your fraud controls are much tighter, but the customer experience is much better. They don't have to, oh, what's my password? I don't know my password. Or, I didn't get my SMS with my OTP. So for the merchants, they really like it. They don't lose business. For the customers, they like it because it's easier to transact online for the majority of transactions, right? The majority are low risk. And for issuers, they like it because their fraud controls are tight, but they still get the benefit of more transactions going through and interest income to change and all that.
Interesting. How would you prevent the use of passwords? Because here in South Africa, myself personally, having several websites, I'm forever having to change my passwords. They are being hacked.
Absolutely. So that's what we're saying. What we're doing is, behind the scenes, in real time, we are fingerprinting the device and looking at your behaviour and profiling you and making a decision based on that, rather than a password.
So you'll do away with passwords eventually?
Well, we actually would prefer to, so we offer different means of authentication, one of them being static password. That's what the issuing bank wants to do. We prefer to move away from that. We prefer to silently authenticate those transactions based on the risk parameters. And then for those that look suspicious, use a dynamic password, so send an OTP via SMS for a small percentage of it. So I wouldn't say we would do away with it. We would like to do away with static passwords because they are very high risk. But we'd still dynamic authentication, one-time password codes, that kind of thing. There's still a space for that.
Okay, thank you.